Welcome to Healing Minds, Stories of Resiliency and Recovery, a conversation held at the intersection of substance abuse, mental health, and everyday living. Your hosts, Mark Regala and Justin Wolf, bring both professional expertise and personal understanding to the table. So welcome to the conversation. Let's dive in.
Hi, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Healing Minds, Stories of Resiliency and Recovery. I'm your host, Justin Wolf, joined by my co-host, as always, Mark Regala. Mark, how are you doing today?
Doing good, Justin. Middle of February. Weather's starting to break a little bit, or I call it purgatory. We got some cold days, we're getting some warmer days, so that's a good thing. 2.5, 3 weeks, we're turning the clocks up, so we're going to have sunlight longer, so that's a good thing. We just finished the Super Bowl. Yeah. Not too exciting.
Unimpressed, it sounds like.
Not too exciting of a game, but pitchers and catchers just reported the spring training, so spring is definitely in the air. But the one thing that we saw during the Super Bowl was a lot of advertisements for online gambling. And I know a lot of people are putting in their bets for the favorite for the World Series this year and the Cy Young winner and all that good stuff. And that leads us into our conversation tonight, which is gambling, but specifically gambling with the youth.
Absolutely, because I think this is a huge demographic that is being inundated with gambling. And they, just like with substances, right? Alcohol, marijuana, whatever substance that has been perpetuated throughout time, the target audience is, hey, capture them young. And that is no different than what is happening with the adolescents today. Because even when you look at what is going on in their video games that they're playing, if I'm saying no, nobody over the age of 18 plays video games again. No, that's not the case. But when you look at, people who are 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, and they're playing these video games, they're not just really playing video games. In a sense, what they're doing is they're learning how to actually gamble. And that's a pretty bold statement when we kind of look at what is being included in a lot of these video games that the youth are playing nowadays. I mean, growing up, one of the things that I talk to my buddies about nowadays, we get older, I'm like, how we all used to collect baseball cards. And we're like, that was just gambling. That was just like a crapshoot of I hope I get what I'm looking for. I'm going to pay a price and hope I get this. And when you look at that today, sports cards, that in itself is another subset that falls under the gambling. When you have these giant breakers spending $10,000, $20,000, and just ripping through these packs, searching for one in particular chase card, and then just dispersing and throwing out the other cards, it is just wild. And I'll tell you, Mark, we went to the card show that was here in Chicago last winter when they had the National here, because I'm like, oh, this was great as a kid. I love this. I'm going to take my son. He's going to experience this. And so they have all these giant breakers streaming it via YouTube, right? So for everybody to watch. And my son's just sitting there watching like, oh, this is cool. Look at all these cards. And obviously, they have a giant stack of cards that are not the cards that they were searching for. And they're good players in there. And it was like a stack about wee big. So it's like a massive stack for a box of cards that costs a couple $100. The guy walks up to my son and goes, hey, do you want these? Because I'm just going to throw them out if you don't want them. I'm like, kid's like, absolutely. But that's kind of where this is getting to. It's kind of not just about, the ideas of, what is gambling? Because gambling today is not the way that it used to be. And that in of itself is part of the problem here. The way that it is interwoven into our culture, into apps, and into video games. It is infiltrating everywhere. Along with, let's not forget, just like you mentioned, the Super Bowl. I mean, you are now seeing, when you're watching a sports broadcast, live odds posted during the game for gambling. And you have certain channels and certain streams of the game that are now being commentated on by former athletes that are sponsored by things like DraftKings and FanDuel to really talk about the gambling content. And this is something that, this has a profound impact, especially for somebody who's just kind of watching the game and goes, you know what? I won my fantasy baseball league last year. I think I know a little bit about this game. I think I can make some quick money doing this, right? And it's a very slippery slope to kind of fall down into what gambling's clutches are waiting for. And so that's where, when we talk about what counts as gambling today, again, very different than it historically has looked like, right? You got your historic casinos, which anybody under the age of 21, you're not allowed to get into. You got your lottery tickets, you got sports betting, and now you got these loot boxes or these social casinos that are out there. And I'll tell you, Mark, I know I'm kind of going on a little bit of a rant here about this because this is something I'm hearing a lot of with the adolescents that I talk to, with the young adults, when we're kind of like talking about, hey, where did this all start? When did this relationship really become intertwined here? And you hear them talk about it's in high school, and people are getting access to their parents' cards, or their parents are like, you know what? Yeah, it's the Super Bowl, so I'll register so we can get that free bet when we bet $5 and we get $300 in free bets, or something along those lines. One of the advertisements and the kid gets in there and they just make this bet. And like they say, the worst thing that could possibly happen the first time you gamble, you win.
Yeah, exactly. When you talk to these youth and you ask, where does it all start? Where's it at right now for them? I mean, are they having struggles and tremendous debt from gambling, or has it led to other forms of addiction and things of that nature?
So I think that's a good question because, I personally have not had a conversation with anybody, even like youth, adults. Even my friends that I know that are kind of throwing down on this, right? Some of them will win and they'll win decently, but none of them will go gloating and talking about, this is kind of like my second income. I'm doing so well here. This is really like my second job. Everybody primarily that I talk to about this, especially when it comes to adolescents, are losing, and they're losing big, and they are racking up significant debt in the process of doing so. One young adolescent I know specifically took his parents' credit card and put $500 into the account because they used the parents' ID. You get the license, take a screenshot of it. People are very quick and thrifty in the way in which they can register these items. And parents, lo and behold, find out $500 has now been withdrawn from their account, right? Fast forward to an individual that I know who had his own bookie and was working with his own personal bookie at college, underage, right? Using this individual and racked up tens of thousands of dollars of debt.
I know that gambling in general can be a very disruptive disease. I've seen it. I've seen it a lot in the recovery world where people get sober off of alcohol or a substance, and they really don't work on those underlying issues that drove the obsessive behavior. So they abstain from alcohol or they abstain from a substance, and you got that transfer addiction into something else. Yeah. And I've seen that happen over and over and over again. But I guess what's concerning to me is with these youth, specifically the younger individuals where the brain is still forming. We had a podcast, I don't know, probably about a year, maybe a little over a year ago, where you really did a good job of educating the general public about what a win on a gamble does from a dopamine perspective. And I was shocked to hear some of that data that you shared with us, because you were saying that the dopamine release on a win, I thought you said was over double the amount of dopamine is released from a win on just a small gamble. Like it could be like a little scratch lottery ticket or something like that, than a line of cocaine. And we talked recently, and you said it might even be larger than that, the discrepancy there.
Yeah. I think that's the part where it's like this, that reward factor of it, the way it just hits the brain. And what we know about adolescence is that reward sensitivity is heightened. So that impact is going to be even that much more profound. And I think that's part of the challenge, right? Is because we're looking at these adolescents and teens and young adults. These are people that don't just stumble into gambling here, right? This is something that is built into our environments that they live in.
I mean, in my opinion, it's no different than drinking.
Mm-hmm.
You see your parents going to the gas station and getting daily lottery tickets, or scratch lottery tickets, or they put $10 in the little slot machine at the gas station or the little restaurant when you're out for family dinner. I mean, that normalization is built in at a young age that, these kids are thinking, okay, well, this is acceptable behavior, not realizing what it does to the brain, what it does to the brain chemistry, and how it can lead to other addictive natures down the road as they become late teens, early adults, and as they go on through life as well, chasing that high.
Absolutely. And as we're talking about, like, I just like have the idea of like those old, like the old beer and like alcohol commercials from the past where it's like everybody's doing it, everybody's having a good time. It's geared towards like younger individuals in particular. When you kind of look at what that ad is like portraying, right? And it's like that's very similar to like what we're seeing with what's happening with gambling here. The mind and the body attaches. You look at what drives it, right? A lot of peer pressure. Other people are doing it. You hear people in school talking about it, or they got this app, and that just escaping from stress. Like, hey, this is going to be my relief. I'm going to finally get what I'm looking for, right? Like the stories that kind of get told, that kind of drive people down that path. And what we know about adolescents too is that they're much more likely to take that risk, right? I'm not going to think about the long-term consequence or the impact of where this could possibly lead me to, because I'm just focusing on what I'm going to get out of this. And now the challenge is, like I was saying, like, hey, this isn't just like something people fall into. Like, this is all about the environment where we live. We know a lot of adolescents and individuals spend a lot of time on social media. And there was a study done that, revealed like, hey, anybody between the ages of 11 to 17, 60% of them reported having experienced and seen an ad for gambling while they were going through their social media there. Whether that was on YouTube or whether it was on just like a social media page. And so like that's a big number of 11 to 17-year-olds that could recall, oh yeah, I remember seeing gambling advertised. And what they found in that same study is that a third of those individuals overall from that age group of 11 to 17 had reported placing a bet over that period of time as well. And so that's something that's concerning when you're looking at people that are getting access to having the ability to go and place these bets and get involved in with this scene, thinking that it's innocent, it's fun, it can enhance this experience when it does very much the exact opposite, where it traps people and now the brain is hardwired and places people and possibly sets them up for a potential very dangerous future in their relationship with gambling.
Yeah. It's interesting because I never thought about the correlation of baseball cards when we were younger.
Yeah. I mean, it's just I don't know about you, but it's like the whole joke is like on social media now. Like I'll see this, I'll follow it on it. Like they'll say I'm shaking. I'm like, I remember that. I remember physically shaking. My hand would literally be trembling as I'm going to open it up, just with that anticipation of what's that going to be like, and just the preoccupation with when can I go get baseball cards again, and throwing a fit. Like I would literally throw a fit. If my parents were here, they'd be like, yeah, I remember that. He was a brat. And if I couldn't get what I was hoping for.
Well, I'll be honest with you. I just started thinking about this as we started recording this podcast, but my nephews wanted to go through. I got this huge like chest of old like baseball cards and hockey cards and football cards from like the 1980s into the early 1990s. And my one nephew was like, hey, can we go through these and see like how much money you have here? And I'm like, you can go through them. I don't know how the hell you're going to find out how much money you have there. And I noticed he started going through these cards at the table and they're keeping track of all this stuff. And I said, how are you keeping track of this stuff? And they downloaded some app on their phone where all they do is scan the card and it tells the approximate value of the card. Like, oh, you got a card here worth like $63, Uncle Mark. And I'm like, how do you know that? Oh, it's this app. And I'm like, wow. And I never really put the correlation together about, I mean, they're obviously not investing in the
Yeah.
cards. I mean, they're going through my cards, but I mean, still, I could see where youth are going to the stores, buying the cards, scanning these cards to see if any of these cards are worth value.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't have much value here. Let me go buy another set of cards or what have you. And all of a sudden, they get one that's worth $10, and now they want more.
Right. I mean, you remember what happened around COVID when they used to put the sign or at Target where it's like only able to buy 2 boxes of cards because people were going in there and just clearing the shelves and then turning around and like reselling this stuff.
Hmm.
So,
And talk about the video games because we talked a little bit before we recorded the podcast. My kids are over, so this is all new to me. But you educated me on some of this stuff too with these loot boxes and things like that.
right. And it's like in the past, I remember hearing it about, with Fortnite being the big thing, but I'm like, FIFA's another big one that has these loot boxes that you can get these items and you can turn around and sell. And I know, and I've talked with quite a few people who are talking about these items and the rare items that you can chase when you purchase these loot boxes. And if you get said item, you can turn around and sell these things for considerable amounts of money. I mean, it is really putting a different spin on the video game experience for people than what it used to be. And so, again, it's like, hey, are you learning to play video games? Are you learning how to gamble and try and make some quick cash through these things? It's it leads to why some of these items cost a considerable amount of money to obtain, even just one of these boxes. You spend a lot of time pursuing this only to get what you didn't hope to get, and it's a disappointment. It makes sense why there'd be some irritability and some frustration over that loss, right? Or some giant mood swings that happen when you're frustrated, overwhelmed, right? It's those signs that are saying, hey, there might be a problem here. And, especially when you talk to kind of the act of pursuing these and the amount of time, energy, and focus it can take to obtain these, you can watch like withdrawing from friends happen. You can watch some secretive behavior going on to try and get these items. And you can watch people's grades drop in the same process. And so all this is kind of going on and saying, hey, those areas of life that I should be attending to and that are really important for me to be showing up in, yeah, they're taking a back seat. Because all of this behavior associated with gambling and the behaviors is just escalating now. And that's what's taking the precedence over these other areas that were once deemed to be, my primary, like what was really important. Just like any other addiction, right? It kind of gets in there,
And
takes a hold, and says, now I'm the most important thing for you to pay attention to.
Yeah, and for the audience, I think it's important to understand, like all the stuff that you just described. Okay, it's as far as behaviors go associated with the gambling, is the same behaviors when somebody's in the early signs of some form of substance addiction or some form of alcohol addiction or any other form of addiction for that matter.
Absolutely.
I mean, what you described was spot on. I mean, it's the same exact behavior, but the issue is now that behavior is starting, maybe possibly even at a younger age. And again, I can't stress this enough. In a lot of instances, it's when the brain is still forming, and when they're getting those dopamine pops, it really could, and they're getting the euphoric or that high, from that win or whatever it might be. It's going to train the brain to continue to try to get that high, and it not only could lead to stronger gambling issues down the road, but it can lead to other addictive issues too. I mean, a lot of times a gambling addiction is associated with an alcohol addiction, or some form of substance addiction. Usually it goes hand in hand. I hate to say it.
Right. I think that's the importance of kind of looking at, hey, what's the prevention aspect we can kind of take here so it doesn't get to that point? Because it does increase the risk for developing a substance use disorder and developing anxiety, depression, right? Or even just carrying into adulthood. The goal is we want to kind of address this at this stage if we're noticing those signs that are coming up so that it doesn't grow into this life-altering path where that individual now has this with them. So I think that's where, as family members, parents, you're seeing your son, daughter, significant other, loved one, engaging these behaviors. Let's have an open conversation without shaming them, right? Let's have the discussion. Let's put it out there so that we have a safe space to discuss this. here's the information. These are the facts. I respect you enough to be open and honest with you. And I also respect you enough that you're intelligent enough to make the decision that you know is in your best interest here. I think another thing is that sometimes we need to monitor people's digital spending, because sometimes these accounts just seem to reload themselves because our credit card's been stored on there. We need to really make sure it's not so that we can stay on top of this and not intentionally be funding any of these behaviors. While we also want to make sure we got some clear financial boundaries in place here, making sure they know what the expectation is. Just because even if the card is there, doesn't mean it's yours to spend, right? And so we want to make sure that there are those awareness programs kind of getting spread out there that is spreading this information, making people aware of the dangers and the risk that gambling brings with it, and that it is not innocent. Even when it might be, marketed and masked as something that's a video game. There are reasons where you look at just how much time these activities actually engage and pull these individuals into as well. So I think there is a lot kind of that we can do on our end, especially when we talk about those loot boxes and kind of putting restrictions on those and regulating what that process looks like. So it's not just a free for all. And also making sure those advertisements that, I was kind of sharing earlier, showing up on, adolescents, children's pages. Why is a child getting a FanDuel ad? You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
doesn't make sense. Just like, why would a child be, oh, here's the new Jose Cuervo? Like, what? Like, why does that?
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense, right? So we need to kind of have some regulations in place that restrict these things popping up just randomly into children's, periphery here.
I mean, they're already seeing it enough because we were talking about the Super Bowl. And it was definitely during the first commercial break. I don't know which commercial, but in the first commercial break, there was an advertisement for DraftKings.
Yeah.
A lot
of these events are sponsored by them.
Yeah, so they're getting that, enough to begin with. But now going on their social media and so forth, seeing all the individualized advertisements, I can see, where the interest might be peaked, and maybe I'll give a shot. And if you got, if it's that easy, to get your parents' information and set up an account, or you got an older sibling. I mean, I know a lot of kids that are, 12 years old, 15 years old, but they might have a brother or sister that's, 21 or older. Hey, and the older sibling might be thinking, okay, well, being the cool older brother or the cool older sister, I'll place a small bet, for this individual or what have you, not realizing the destruction that it can cause on the brain and the addictive behavior that it can cause down the road for that child.
Right. No, and I think that's the thing, Mark. Kind of leads us, and I think to kind of, bring it home here, talking about, just gambling is more accessible than ever here at this point. And we're talking about the adolescents. We know that they're neurologically and socially vulnerable. Their just brains are still developing, right? Those impulse control is not really there. Their reward center is much more reactionary here. So hypersensitive. So that early intervention is really important, really critical. And those conversations that we have are that much more valuable, especially at this time. And we know that the most, important place that these conversations are happening is in that home. So that they are getting armed with that ammunition by people that are closest to them. And they can see that they're taking this serious as well. Because again, this isn't about blame or shaming. This is about just increasing awareness and giving people the opportunity to make a different decision if they may have stumbled down this path already. Or seen that path and made a different choice, and making sure that that road, we don't want to walk down. We want to kind of just keep walking down the path we're going. So I think that is really important here in this process. So Mark, anything you'd like to add as we kind of wrap things up here?
No, I appreciate your insight. When it comes to, gambling's not something that I really partake in. I've seen the destructive behavior of it, though, personally, as well as, again, being in the recovery world. But for whatever reason, it's just not something I got involved in. Maybe because I know my addictive tendency. So I just,
Right.
so I'm like, that's something I don't want to dabble with. I've seen enough people lose enough money and have enough financial stress as a result of that, knowing how I am. I'm like, that's just something that kind of scares me, So thank goodness that's something, a trait that I never really got involved in. But I see it. I've seen it with friends. I've seen it with family. I've seen it, like I said, in the recovery world. I've heard some crazy stories, I mean, unbelievable stories. I mean, it's just as destructive as any form of alcohol addiction or drug addiction, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, and I think I love the fact you kind of say, hey, like, fortunately your mind didn't do the thing where it's like, maybe this will be different, right? Like, I think that's time, wisdom, and being openly honest with yourself kind of gives you that light to kind of know, like, I know how this story plays out here.
Yeah.
But I think that's kind of, you highlight on one of the really important things where we talk about gambling that comes up even across the ages here. The idea of like chasing your losses, right? Just quitting before I hit the big one. I can't walk away yet, right? And you see people just keep chasing, doubling down. And that's where this debt just grows deeper. The mood and those thoughts of like, suicide, because suicide and gambling, those go hand in hand, unfortunately, because people get so dark, desperate, desolate, and hopeless that, I mean, it just, especially when you look at that financial hole that's also there, that can really swallow somebody up there. So I think, the earlier we can kind of intervene to kind of give people the information here and make them aware and hopefully put them on a different path so they don't have to suffer that pain, the better, and it's a job well done. So, no, Mark, I appreciate you, man, kind of joining this conversation, let us kind of revisit, because I think, just kind of seeing the Super Bowl and some of the new articles that are kind of coming out just kind of brought it back to fruition where it's, just talking that, hey, we got to stay on top of this, because if not, this is going to grow into be something bigger than it's already become once it became legalized, and once it became accessible in the palm of your hand. So that's where I think we just need to kind of stay on top of this, making sure we are, making sure we're providing that awareness and that support for people to not, get stuck in that spot. And if they find themselves stuck, hey, let's have the open, honest conversation so that we can do it. We can make a change, right? So recovery can happen here.
Absolutely. So that was a good conversation, good education, Justin. I appreciate it.
Awesome, man. Yeah, appreciate you, man. So these conversations, like, just like all our podcasts, are going to air on the 1st and the 15th. So feel free to tune in. We are, as always, open to any, feedback or suggestions on topics you'd like to see us kind of cover. So feel free to reach out to us. And, as always, we look forward to you joining us on our next episode of Healing Minds. And until then, you all take care, be well, and we will catch you on the next episode. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for joining us today on Healing Minds, Stories of Resiliency and Recovery. If you're on the journey to find guidance and insights, subscribe now wherever you find your podcasts. Healing Minds, Stories of Resiliency and Recovery is an educational resource, not a substitute for medical or therapeutic advice. The opinions expressed by the hosts and their guests are not necessarily those of NAMI DuPage. Go to namidupage.org/podcast for links to past episodes, show notes, and to submit a question or topic ideas for a future episode. Until next time, be well.